Hey everyone, I'm your host NP Rose and welcome to Storm Revelation. So I decided to go ahead and do a 3-part series or video segment on fatherlessness and the impact that having a lack of father in the home actually brings to a child's well-being. And so this particular video is just going to be, like I said, a general topic. So this can apply to both men and women. But I am in segment 2, or the second part of the video. I'm going to talk about how fatherlessness affects men. And then in part 3, I'm going to talk about how fatherlessness affects women. So this is just a general term. So statistically, in the US, I'm being told that 98.5 million children do not have fathers in the home. So that means that 1 out of 4 child in the US is being raised without a father. Now, whether or not the statistics is accurate or not, because we all know that statistics has to do with the census. And if everyone did not complete the census, then the census itself will not be accurate. So in order for the accuracy of the census to be upheld, that means that every single household in the United States should have completed that census. So let's assume that not everyone did, because the likelihood of every single household completing it is just unrealistic. So there are some people out there who did not complete the census. So out of those who did complete the census, there is 1 out of 4 child in the US now who grows up without a father. Now, during the Bush administration, and I'm talking about George W. Bush, he recognized that this was something that impacted society. Now, fatherlessness doesn't just affect the United States, it affects the United Kingdom. It affects also Canada. So it doesn't really matter where in the part of the world you live, the effects are going to be pretty much the same. So let's talk about what W. George Bush stated. Now, W. George Bush addressed this issue while he was in office. And this was his statement. And I'm going to read the statement directly. It says, over the past 4 decades, fatherlessness has emerged as one of our greatest social problems. We know that children who grow up with absent fathers can suffer lasting damage. They are more likely to end up in poverty or drop out of school, become addicted to drugs, have a child out of wedlock, or even end up in prison. Fatherlessness is not the only cause of these things, but our nation must recognize it is an important factor. So even while George W. Bush was in office, he recognizes that the impact of not having a father can cause great damage to a child, whether a boy or a girl. And even though there's some similarities, but there's also staggering differences between a woman and a male, or a boy and a girl not having a father, their biological father, in their lives. Now, what are some of the things that someone who does not have a father can go through, whether male or female? This is just general. They typically struggle with feelings of abandonment and low self-esteem due to the lack of their father's love in their life. So some of them turn to drugs, alcohol, risky sexual activity, and they engage in unhealthy relationships or even other self-destructive behaviors to numb the pain that they feel by not having a father's love in their life. So ultimately, what are some of the devastating effects in general that a child can go through when they do not have a father figure, or their fathers, their biological fathers, in their lives? Well, we already said that children have a diminished self-concept. They basically are, they have insecurities when it comes to physical and emotional attachment. Because of their feelings of abandonment of their fathers not being in their lives, they struggle with their emotions, and they basically wallow in self-loathing concepts of the self. They also engage in behavioral problems. Children who don't have their fathers in their lives have a more difficult time adjusting socially with others. So they basically report having problems with friends, and they typically develop this type of swaggering, intimidating persona in attempt to disguise the fears and the resentment and the anxiety and the unhappiness that they actually have. So males who typically don't have fathers in their lives create this false sense of machismo or male dominance, and they tend to bump heads a lot with other males in order to prove that they're men. These individuals also end up performing very poor academically. And the statistics is staggering because it says that 71% of high school dropouts typically don't have fathers in their lives. They grew up in a home where the father was absent, and they have trouble academically. They typically score lower in math and thinking skills. And because the father is not home, and the father typically plays a large role in the family and in that child staying in school, they typically drop out by the age of 16. And they're less likely to academically and professionally qualify for any type of jobs because of the fact that they dropped out. It's very common for a child who doesn't have a father in their life to experience an increased level of delinquency and youth crime. The statistic says that 85% of youth who are in prison have an absent father in their lives, and they're more likely to offend as adults and end up in the prison system as well. The other fact is promiscuity and teen pregnancy. Children who are or children who don't have fathers in their lives and have absent fathers in the homes experience problem with sexual health. They're more likely to engage in sexual activity at a much younger age. They're more likely do not use contraception when they first engage in sexual activity, causing them to become teenage parents. They're more likely to contract sexual transmitted infections. And girls especially tend to manifest an object hunger for males. So they experience an emotional loss of their father, and this causes them to reject men, but they become susceptible to men's exploitation when it comes to how a man will use a woman sexually for her body. These individuals who don't have fathers in their lives or who grew up in a fatherless home tend to turn to drug and alcohol usage. So they're more likely to smoke, engage in illegal drug usage, both in their childhood, and this continues during their adulthood as well. 90% of runaway children do not have fathers in the home. So they're more likely to experience homelessness. So 90% of runaway children have absent fathers within their home, which is why they run away. So these kids or these children end up experiencing homelessness. Another factor is exploitation and abuse. Children who don't have fathers in their homes or in their lives are at greater risk of suffering physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. The abuse and the emotional mistreatment is 100 times higher when it comes to the abuse. And there's a study that was done that reports that preschoolers not living with either biological parents were 40 times more likely to be sexually abused. Did you hear what I just said? The study said that preschoolers who did not live with either biological parents, meaning their mother or father, were 40 times more likely to experience sexual abuse. That is a staggering high number. Another problem that a fatherless child or children can experience are physical health problems. Now, children who don't have fathers in their lives tend to experience more psychosomatic health symptoms and illnesses that are acute and chronic and pain. They tend to be asthmatic, headaches, and experience more frequent stomach aches than children who have fathers in their lives. These fatherless children also tend to experience more mental health disorders. And what do I mean? It's a wide range of mental health disorder, but particularly anxiety, depression, and thoughts of suicide, or actually going through their suicidal thoughts and ideas. These children also experience significant life changes overall. They're more likely to experience unemployment. They're more likely to live or have a lifestyle that is low in income. And they basically remain on social assistance, meaning welfare, food stamp, and they experience a higher level of homelessness, being homeless. The next thing is future relationships. A child who doesn't have a father in their lives also experience partners at an early age, but they're more likely to have a higher rate of divorce. They're more likely to dissolve cohabitating unions that they experience, meaning living together. And they're more likely to have children outside of marriage or have children outside of any given partnership that they have. So that means that they're more likely to cheat on their spouse. They're more likely to go outside of that relationship seeking that missing love or seeking to fill that emptiness and that void that they feel due to them not having their fathers in their lives. And the very last thing that I'm going to talk about is mortality. So fatherless children are more likely to die as children and live an average lifespan of 4 years less than the average person. So if a woman's lifespan, say, is 80, at the year of 80, a woman typically tends to die. And I'm not saying that that's what it is, but take for example that that's what it was. Then subtract 4 from the 80, and that would be the life expectancy of someone who has or who grew up without a father in their lives. Now, looking at the statistics that I talked about, this should be very alarming, and this should be something that our society takes highly into consideration, that when God created man first, he created man for a purpose. And there is a purpose why a man has an X and a Y chromosome. A man is very vital to the life of his son, but it's also vital to the life of his daughter, which is why a man carries both chromosomes biologically. This is not something that was done by accident. This was God's intentional and original plan for a man. So a man's role biologically is very significant in the life of his son and is very significant in the life of his daughter. And so the next video is going to talk about exactly what that significance is and what the difference is between a man who doesn't have his father and what he experiences, and a woman who doesn't have her father and some of the things that she experiences. So go ahead and tune in for me for part 2 and part 3 of this mini series of the impact of fatherlessness on our society. If you like the video, go ahead and hit the like button. Please go ahead and leave whatever comments you have. You can leave comments also if you are one of those individuals who grew up without their fathers in their life. How did you feel? How do you currently feel? What are some of the impact that you're still experiencing even now to this day because you did not grow up with your father and or don't even know who he is? Or maybe you did, but because of divorce and separation or breakup, your father did not play a significant role in your life. So it's as if you grew up without knowing who your father was. And also subscribe to the channel. That way you can go ahead and get notifications. And every time a video is released, you're able to be notified and you can check the video out. So thank you very much for joining me for part 1 of this. Hopefully this information is very helpful to you. And by knowing the information and by having the knowledge, it helps to break cycles. So this is what this video is all about, or Storm Revelation is all about, is bringing knowledge to the forefront so that you have understanding, so you can apply certain wisdom to your life so that you're able to break generational cycles. And so this is what this video is all about. So again, join me for part 2 and part 3, which talks about fatherless and the effects on men and fatherlessness and the effects on women. Thank you very much for joining me. You have a very blessed one. Bye.